everyone. This is Ronnie from Everything Vive. I'm here today with Martin Bradstreet. He's the CEO of Martov Co, and he's actually also the creative director on the studio's upcoming game that's coming out. Actually, by the time you hear this, pretty soon. The game's Chiaro and the Elixir of Life, and it's scheduled to come out on September 13th. So, thank you so much for being on the show, Martin. Really excited about the game and to talk to you about it.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me. Obviously, we're pretty excited too, and it's after almost 3 years' work, we're near the finish line. So it's everyone at the studio is pretty excited, but obviously, yeah, working pretty hard now.
Yeah, no, I can only imagine. So you guys are located in Montreal, right?
Yeah, that's right. It's funny though. Me and my co-founder Jason Rosenkrantz, who's also the game director on Chiaro. Yeah, neither of us are from Montreal originally.
Yeah, I was gonna say that didn't sound like the Canadian French accent.
French Canadian accent. Yes, that's how we speak French down under. Yeah, so we had known each other for quite a long time. That Jason and I, at least 10 years before we founded the studio. He was living in Austin at the time.
Okay.
And we had both been kind of working in the entertainment industry. Myself more in the sort of the 3D art and music side, and Jason more as an indie film producer.
Okay.
And so often we'd also both played poker pretty seriously in the past, and so we're sort of looking for another challenge after that.
Huh.
And so every once in a while we'd be talking on Skype or whatever it was, Hangouts. And just kind of be feeling each other out for things we might want to do together at some point, because we both felt like we were pretty motivated to create something.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay,
so
you guys
VR came along.
Uh-huh.
VR came along, and so we both kind of became aware of it at the DK2 stage.
Okay.
And I guess around the same time as Gear VR started to be a possibility. And we sort of started sending messages back and forth. And the decision we made at some point was to switch from the iPhone to the Samsung, I think it was the S6 at the time. And we were like, look, let's just both buy an S6 and try to get a Gear VR. And, nothing serious. But, let's just try some of the mobile content. And, switching phones will be, the tiniest possible commitment of doing something together,
Yeah.
And so we did that, and we tried some of the content even on mobile, and we were like, oh, this is pretty cool. This is pretty interesting. Maybe something in 360 video is something we could use promotionally for other stuff we were doing. So, he was doing a horror or a sort of a dark short film that ended up getting into a fantastic arcade in Austin called The Giver Taker, and he was kind of thinking about if they could do 360 video for that, and I was doing a lot of music stuff at the time, and sort of started thinking if we could do some 360 video for that. And so we sort of thought, maybe we should meet up in Austin and talk a bit more. We went down to Austin and started talking about what we might want to do together, and I think the big connection for us was to do character-driven storytelling.
Okay.
Yeah, that was kind of the big bond. Is the coolest thing that it seemed like it would be possible to do in VR would be character-driven for us.
Yeah, no, and that comes across really strongly. I mean, we'll get into the game itself later, but it's clear that you guys had a focus in mind, I think, when you created this.
Oh yeah, it was from day one. It was really clear that whatever it turned out to be, characters would be at the center of it. And so Jay and I met up in Austin and started dealing with we tried some 360 video stuff and actually built some GoPro camera rigs and that sort of thing. But I had done a fair bit of 3D in the past, and it seemed pretty clear to me, given all the issues we were having, basically just setting up shots and getting stereo image and that sort of thing, that it would just be way easier to tell a good story using a game engine. Even people doing 360 video were using game engines to do stuff. And so actually it was probably by diving into Unity, and then eventually we sort of upgraded or switched, I guess, to Unreal Engine. That was kind of the thing that I guess, empowered us to be able to actually create the product.
And
that it became.
how intimidating was it for you guys? Because obviously you had the 3D background, but not necessarily the game background. And then you had, someone with a film, storytelling kind of background. But, I hear a lot of filmmakers and storytellers that want to get into the medium and basically say, well, they don't necessarily have the skill set, for games, or it's kind of a different beast altogether. Like what you guys were just kind of headstrong and just wanted to get into it, or did you find it not particularly too bad once you started, or?
It was up to this point. It's been difficult, but Jason and I used to play poker pretty seriously, and we were quite good at that. And like actually, the first sort of seed financing for the company was largely money that we had won, and that's actually kind of something that it has a lot of grinding elements to it. It's like very high pressure. It's very competitive. And like you have to put in a lot of hours to do it, but if you do and you're kind of introspective and capable, like you can do kind of well at it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that had kind of trained us for it turns out that making a game is actually pretty difficult. But we had spent a lot of time doing difficult things that required a large time investment.
No,
so it was really hard, but it's Scott as well. So Jason's brother Scott Rosenkrantz also came on board as it started to get as our ideas started to get legs, and like I think the three of us have very much an attitude of like, well, this is new for everyone right now, but like we're kind of the guys that are happy to work 80 hours a week to make it work.
Yeah, and is it just you three, or like did the team?
No.
Okay.
So we sort of incubated the ideas, and we did a hackathon down in Austin. It's kind of funny thinking back on it, because at this time I'd never even tried a HTC Vive. I'd tried a DK2 and also a Gear VR, and I don't know if you've heard of the Wave VR.
Yeah, I have.
Yeah, so I went and tried Jason was in Austin, and so was Aaron Blanke, the CCO of the Wave. And we went over to his place at one point when that idea was just massively in its infancy. And it was the first time I tried a HTC Vive, and I guess Aaron knew Jay. And I was just like, this is amazing. Like, trying the Vive after like trying to ship content onto the S6.
Yeah.
It was like, this is, we thought it was cool. And then it just, the spatial awareness and the tracking. And it was crazy, because I was just thinking like, does this guy even know what he has here? Of course he did, because he was the one that made it, right? Like he's just sitting here with this amazing idea.
Yeah.
This is amazing. Like, how can he not know this should be huge already? And of course he did know, and he was doing exactly what we would do, 6 months later, which is like invest all his time to make it a reality. But for me, it was really amazing seeing that. Yeah, that was kind of the first experience I tried on the Vive, and it was like, whoa.
It's funny because I've seen a lot of people have that reaction to the Vive, like when especially people that think people that haven't tried like room scale or even the Rift can do some great things now too, but like people that hadn't tried high-end VR and kind of felt like they knew kind of what was capable in this medium, and then they tried those higher end systems and they were just like, holy, like what is this, like this is crazy.
Exactly.
You're mind blown.
Yeah, my brother tried out. There's a sort of like the Skype for VR, I think, is their marketing. Pluto VR. And my brother tried out their product, and he sent me a message. It was the first time he had tried Vive, and I was always trying to get him to try our game, but we're not in the same city, so it made it tough.
Sure.
And he went over there and tried their product and was like, dude, this product is amazing. And I'm like, I believe that it is amazing, but is this the first time you've also tried the HTC Vive?
That's so...
Because I think just him being in a room with that room scale was just like, wow, it's like the hands are just tracked so well.
No, it's incredible. I remember the first time, like, kind of like tossing the controllers and catching them and being like, this is like unreal. This doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. So we I was in Montreal, and I had a studio up here already, and so I went back from Austin. We finished off our hackathon down there, and we sort of built maybe this. Looking back on it, it would be pretty funny to play this game demo actually. But like we built this really really simple thing, and I was mainly doing 3D modeling at the time. Like it was largely just Boca, the steam powered penguin, and Jay was doing more of the gameplay kind of oriented stuff. I wasn't even really using the engine at all at that point in time. And Scott was doing textures, texturing at the time. But he later moved on to sound engineering, which was a much better fit for his skills. Anyway, so I went back to Montreal there, and we kept talking, and we started working remotely on it. But it was sort of like a 20 or 30 hour a week thing at that point in time.
Okay.
We were both sort of training up in pre-production. We were talking about the story for Chiaro, learning the tools. I was working on the characters.
That's amazing that even at that early stage, like, because for people out there that haven't played the game yet, like I played a little bit of it, before getting on this conversation, and it sounds like the steam powered penguin, for example, like characters and assets that you were working on this early. It's amazing that it ended up, carrying on to the final product.
Well, so if you go to Martov.com, I did actually do a dev blog on the development of that asset. And you'll see that there was a fair bit of iteration on the character over time. Yeah. And I actually put up well, I'll get onto this later, but I did get 90% of the way there. But as our team grew, I even eventually we hired a really, really strong character artist down the road. And he was kind of like, could I just tweak the texturing a little bit here? And I was like, oh, it's kind of my baby at this point. But I sort of realized at some point, we had 10 people in the company, well, 8 people at that time, 10 now. Yeah, we had 8 people in the company at that point, and at some point I think you have to switch to just doing whatever's best for the game.
Yeah. So at that stage, so you got back from the hackathon, and you're kind of figuring out, like, it sounds like at that point you decided that this was going to be bigger than you had initially anticipated, or like at what point did you realize, like, did you set out I know you said you knew you wanted to do something story and character driven, but the time I played with Chiaro, it seems like a really ambitious, like pretty large scale game for compared to a lot of the other games that are out there on the Vive right now. Like, when did you realize that you were gonna really try to make this as big of an experience as it ended up becoming?
Well, so coming from the backgrounds we did, which was more general entertainment than the game development side initially. Mm-hmm. Now we've hired a lot from the game world, and I think we're actually pretty strong there now, but we came from more the entertainment side. And so for us, we spent a lot of time initially talking and developing script and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So we came up with this 3-act story, and then, like a little over a year in, maybe even a year and a half in, we had all these great looking characters, and we had sort of developed the gameplay, but none of them could do anything because we hadn't spent enough time developing the AI systems at that point in time. They're pretty good now, but I guess what happened is that we wrote an ambitious script, and then there were quite a few heated discussions about what to do, since we realized that to do it properly, it would be a more ambitious undertaking, but that to cut it down would basically kill what it was. Like, we couldn't just back into a sort of tech demo style game. Yeah. Or maybe even just like a core mechanic kind of game. Like, one of the things with Chiaro is that every level you're doing these things that we could have just built into like people will make a game that's just fishing. Like in Chiaro, fishing will be like one of the 7 things you do in a level, And it's like we still have to build the whole system to make that work, But for us, like, an adventure involves doing a lot of different things, and you're always wondering around what's around the next corner and that sort of thing. And so, yeah, it did end up being a more ambitious undertaking than maybe we thought it would be. But I think we're a fairly ambitious team generally. And I would say even we really think that I think VR kind of needs a little bit of that, because if you don't sort of push for something that might not be possible, you end up kind of selling out the medium in some ways. It's like people see that the medium maybe doesn't support pushing for that level of content, and so they just kind of aim for something more attainable. And then you kind of end up thinking that, everything in VR is cel-shaded.
Yeah, no, I do. What about? I mean, obviously, you guys had a mission to accomplish here. What was it about VR that you wanted to do as far as storytelling and character development and everything that couldn't be done in other obviously, VR seemed cool and it was the next big thing and you were excited about it, but did you have any kind of vision as to what could be done in VR that wouldn't be possible in other mediums?
Well, so it's I think the realization quite early was that the limitation was always going to be on the creator's side, for what would be possible. Because even the hardware right now enables, if you put $500 million, or let's say, I don't know what Naughty Dog spends on a game or something, but if you put if you put a couple $100 million into a VR game, the tech, and then you say 1080 Ti spec is the minimum, and then you give a team $100 or $200 million, and maybe you let the HTC Vive people use the Oculus controllers, or HTC finally ships the one they're working on.
Yeah, exactly.
But you got the best tracking, you've got the current hardware that's out there. You don't even need future hardware, and you give a team $100 million. The creators are the creators are the bottleneck there. Even with that much, because you can do so much. You can do so much with VR. So some of the stuff that seems possible to us that we're excited about exploring more is just basic any level of interaction with a character. You should be able to grab a character's arm and move it around, Yeah. And then that pretty quickly leads to well, how well can you dance with a character in VR?
Yeah.
And then what does that do for you as an animated storyteller? Because really it seems like the scope is just unlimited. It really feels like it's unlimited. Even stuff like voice is pretty exciting at some point.
No, I agree. Yeah, and it's funny, that's a really good point with the interactions, for example. It's kind of in VR, there's so much potential for the players to interact with characters and the environment around them that it's almost like you give them you kind of give them the first options, which you can interact with everything, and the players are always going to push until they find something that doesn't work. It's kind of it's like, oh, that worked. That's cool. Can I throw it against this thing? Oh, cool. That worked too. I wonder if I can do this, or I wonder, and it's just a never ending.
Yeah. So almost everything in our game is interactable, but there's one or two things that aren't, and it is there have been if they're not, it's because it would create some other big problem, But I do think one of the cool things about Chiaro is almost I sometimes wonder, it just seems like we had to do it.
Yeah.
We had to make everything interactable because otherwise the immersion would be broken. And we kind of trapped ourselves in this aesthetic viewpoint. But I think it makes the game better for it. But I definitely feel you on that point. It's as soon as you just want literally everything to be interactable in a way that you feel it should be.
Yeah.
Your immersion is broken. It's not a big thing, but it's a small little thing that slowly bleeds the magic out of your game.
Yeah. No, and there's obviously I feel like sometimes those weird interactions happen when in Chiaro, the time I spent with it, you were very good about kind of directing the player in terms of giving them stuff to do at all times and interesting points to kind of, so you didn't really necessarily just wander and do nothing Like it's those games that sometimes just like completely leave you out in the open, that like open themselves up to like but like, yeah, I mean, it's interesting that you mentioned the fact that you guys, came into this from the story perspective, and how much time and effort you put into, creating the narrative before even really figuring out how you were going to implement it into the game. Because, I mean, one of the things that I noticed right off the bat that was super strong and like differentiated Chiaro from a lot of the other games I've played in VR, up to this point, is how well everything, like, not only because I really want to talk about the environment in quite a bit of detail for a little bit, because like right away, like I was just like, wow, this is like it feels almost like an open world game, just as far as like the scope of the world that you guys created. And I mean, my initial instinct was thinking about it from more of a technical perspective, like, you opened up and you see this like forest in front of you, and this is like right, at the beginning when it loaded up, and I thought, wow, this is, incredible. I'm outside, I can go anywhere, this is cool. And then the next thing that kind of impressed me about the scope of the game and the world that you created had nothing to do with the technical side of things. It actually seemed, like you were saying, to be more of a storytelling kind of, developmental thing that you guys did that I don't see in a lot of games, which is like seeing the map of the world when you wake up and you're in the room in Chiaro's room, I believe, at the beginning. And
Yep.
you're kind of setting out on your journey for the first time, and there's like a map presented to you that kind of shows you certain landmarks that are, I assume, are close by. I haven't gotten to explore everything yet, but like,
Sure.
and Chiaro even mentions, like he hopes to one day go to the top of this mountain peak or something, and like
Yeah.
there was just like a lot of these little subtle things that were being done just in terms of me like starting the game and then going down into the little elevator mechanism and seeing that this world is still open. Like it was those little things, I think, that made it seem like there was so much. Like it almost reminds me of like, Star Wars or other types of good examples of storytelling where like you feel like there's more to this world than I know, and I'm just kind of like getting caught up to speed on it. If that makes sense.
That's what we want to give people, I think, is for them to enter our world, and for us not to dispel everything out immediately, but for the player to feel compelled to learn more. And so I think that at the end of the day, like you mentioned to start, actually some of the in reality, a lot of the technical decisions actually give you that feeling as much as the writing, which is very important, obviously.
Yeah.
But for example, like the first thing you probably noticed in the game is the foliage in the game, and that's probably not a particularly jazzy thing to talk about. But we did go through 3 or 4 different tree pipelines, and eventually, between the efforts of environment artist named Justin Dorian, who works with us, and also our technical director Bernard, we managed to build that sort of environment around you, which gives you that ambient feeling of wanting to explore more. Like we try to do it with the storytelling, but also just the fact that you're like, oh, I can see things in the distance, or like, oh, I'm in a forest.
Yeah.
Like, you can't believe how many times in year 1 we were just like arguing about like, this is why you don't do a forest in VR.
and that's what, like, I guess since we are talking
like, we have to.
Yeah.
It's in the script. It has to be possible.
So you just like, because that was my one of my follow-up questions was going to be about just how you guys made it all work. I know you switched engines at one point, to Unreal and like, but I mean, I granted I am running on a high end, like I run a 1080 Ti, but like a lot, even with a good graphics card, a good setup, there's a lot of games out there that will really bog down in certain types of environments and different kinds, and everything was running really, really fluidly, regardless of how much foliage was on the screen and all of that stuff for me. So like, what did you guys, like, what was that process like, trying to like make it and then kind of scale it back or scale it up or figure out something that worked?
Well, so it's largely the result of Bernard Duchesne, our technical director, and then us kind of essentially saying like, look, we're gonna get the result we're after, and if it takes longer, I mean, we're not really okay with it. Like, we're a small company, that's gonna be bad for us, but like, we can't help ourselves. So like, just accept that, you know, we're not cutting the forest, basically, or we're not switching to a cell shaded art style or that sort of thing. You know, like, this is the direction we're taking, and if we blow up the company doing it, like, we're gonna, you know, we just feel like it has to be possible. It has to be possible to do more in VR than just the typical sort of cell shaded Unity aesthetic. And like, there's a lot of games that have really, really, like, really addictive and fun gameplay that fit into that world. So I don't mean to be dismissive, but for a game like ours that is about kind of entering a world and feeling like, you know, it's like you know, as a 3D artist, I'll just buy tons of art books, you know, and it's like I want to feel like those worlds are like part of my identity almost, you know, like I want them to be closer to myself and to feel like I can explore them and that, I feel like that art really does drive the storytelling forward. You know, it does compel you to explore more when maybe other people might use a gameplay feature to do that. And we try to do both at the best of times.
No, I totally agree. And like on that note, I guess one of the other things that I noticed kind of right away when I was playing was the character designs of the creatures. So they're not necessarily, you know, like characters like you know, Chiaro or Boku, who we'll later talk about, but they were definitely characters as far as, you know, again adding to that sense of creating a world that, you know, there were all these different types of creatures that like frog goblins or like and all these, like, how did you guys like develop all the creatures, and what was your goal?
So I mean, we just love little creatures to start with. So like, I'm gonna give you the like polished creative direction answer, but like let me start by just saying, like, at our studio, you know, everyone has toys on their desk, you know, like even the programmers, like everyone's got toys all over their desks, and like we love little creatures, you know.
Yeah.
So we start with that. Now, in terms of the snail goblins specifically,
snail goblins. There you go. I knew it.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, there's little,
because they have the snail shell on the back. Like that was one of the first things that I interacted with, because I was like, and then I saw the little one like playing the violin and all kinds of like
the musicians. So, well, for starters, it just gives you something like it gives you something to enjoy. They're just kind of, little creatures are just kind of fun, and it gives you these little moments of storytelling that aren't about like nice writing. They're about these kind of like animated storytelling sequences. Like if you're exploring in the forest, you're Chiaro, and like Taylor Gray's reactions to the snail goblins are great. Like you're exploring in the forest, and you feel like you're exploring a more magical forest as the result of this. Now, in the later levels, we had things that moved around, right? In the first level, we didn't have a lot of things moving around. And so at one point, I was talking to one of the artists on our team, and was like, we kind of need something moving around in the first level, I think. And for the snail goblin, he's like, and I was thinking of like maybe something like a deer, but like, what does a deer look like in the world of Chiaro and the Elixir of Life? Like, are we going to just have a straight deer? Because there's not really like, you don't see any, besides the peanut butter pig, there aren't really any creatures that exist in real life. And I mean, you're probably not going to find him on planet Earth either. I was thinking maybe he would come up with a deer or something that was a bit more enchanting than a deer, but roughly deer-like. And he just did this little sketch, and he's like, it's a snail goblin. And I don't know if he had just had it in his idea, or if he just improvised that on the spot, because it was literally, he did like a 10-minute sketch. And
that's awesome.
awesome. And I was like, Yeah, okay, the Snail Goblin's got to go in the game. He was like, okay. And it's like, yeah, it's now a priority to get the Snail Goblin in this game.
That's awesome. Yeah, no, all the characters that I've seen so far and like the creatures and stuff are like that. Like whenever I see something that flies by me or walks by me or anything in my periphery, like I immediately want to go and check it out because I'm like, what is this thing? Like it's
Yeah,
and
yeah,
and that leads to a lot of cool moments too because like especially later on in the game when you're doing a little bit of puzzle solving or trying to find like sometimes like you mentioned with the peanut butter the peanut butter pigs or whatever, like that was just something that I noticed and then I went and investigated and then you see the tracks in the sand from the pig and then you start following and like there were a lot of moments like that where like the character design or something about like the creature kind of piqued my interest and then it led me to go do something and I ended up getting like an achievement for it or I ended up like wandering off and finding something I wouldn't have found otherwise or like there were a lot of cool stuff in the game like that.
yeah. I mean, it's like we a lot of hours have gone into the game, and so sometimes, yeah, sometimes if you're working on a Saturday on some very important, which we've been doing for 3 years, the founders at least, everyone else on the team is not a super frequent thing, but yeah, for us it's really been endless, but it's fun. But you sometimes at like 5 p.m. on a Saturday, if someone's implementing something like that,
Yeah,
it can be easy. Even between me and Jay or Scott and myself or whatever, we have a pretty good relationship. But sometimes it's just like, dude, what are you doing working on this little thing? Like, we have other problems, and you're doing like you're putting a hat on this thing.
Honestly, though, it's that stuff though. I think that like shines through. Like when you're playing, it's like you can see the personality and kind of the charm, from what you guys.
Well, it ends up being the little things end up being the thing.
Yeah.
Like it turns out that those tiny little moments you have end up kind of being a lot of the memories you have of playing the game.
Yeah. No, because at the end of the day, like most people that will set out to make a game will make the game itself work, or at least you hope it's going to work. But it's like those little things, those like moments of love, I guess, that are put in when people are just having a good time. I think that really like it's interesting. Like yeah, I didn't know how designed those were, if those were just stuff that it seems like you guys were really good about just kind of putting in things that you thought people would enjoy and things that you guys enjoyed, and that's kind of what led to some of that stuff. But it's really cool.
Yeah, well, definitely. Whenever we're in an environment, it's something we're looking around, being like, can we get something in there to make it a little bit more magical, or just, it's like you're in virtual reality. Like you want to just, like I grew up in like a really small town, and my house was surrounded by a forest, and like I'd walk around there, and like there would be some interesting things walking around our little house, but like it wasn't like I was compelled to explore it. But like if you build a perfect simulation of that in VR, you're missing out on the opportunity to basically make it that, like, when I was a kid, imagine if my house was surrounded by the forest from like My Neighbor Totoro.
Yeah.
Or like a Studio Ghibli film. Like it's just, you have the power to give someone that. You have the power to put someone into that forest where, like, around every corner there's an exciting little thing, like the Alice in Wonderland forest or the Hayao Miyazaki forest,
Yeah. No, that's amazing. And something that you mentioned in passing that I want to get back to now. You mentioned getting voice actor Taylor Gray, I believe, for the voice of Chiaro. I know he's, like, for those out there that don't recognize the name, he was Ezra on Star Wars Rebels, which I'm sure a lot of people out there that are listening to this podcast may be well aware of. But like, what was how did you guys go about? Like, how did that end up happening, and how great was that to work with Taylor?
Well, so that Jay gets all the credit for tracking him down. He put on his film producer hat, I guess, and was like, like actually sometimes famous people are gettable. I'm gonna see what I can do, and it just worked out straight away. I guess Taylor actually had been interested in virtual reality previously. Maybe Jay knew that. I don't actually know. And so Jay just got in touch with him and his agent, and we told them about the story, and I think it resonated with Taylor. I think I think he connected with what we're trying to do in VR. It's not a game with like guns and shooting things. It's a game that's trying to push the medium forward and make it about story and make it about exploration and music and art. And so I think that excited him, and I think he just wanted to do it. And so then I was privileged enough to get to fly out to LA and work with him there, and it was a ton of fun. I think he had an interesting experience because the video game world is definitely, well, we had a lot of lines. Let's just say that.
Yeah. I was gonna say, like, just the number of things that you can interact with, and then like I mean, as I was playing it, I felt like there were a lot of different like sayings and recordings and stuff for all kinds of stuff I was doing. So I was kind of surprised, like.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, he gets absolute credit for, like we've heard that sometimes in game productions, the voice acting can turn out a little flat if they have too many lines to get, and we did have too many lines. He sounds amazing. He was kind of like, he was like the glimmer in the eye, eyes on the prize kind of thing, and he was just like, I mean, it's a lot, but we're gonna do it.
Yeah,
and he would just go from like. You're like, okay, we're okay. That was a funny scene. Now we're gonna do a super intense scene right now. We gotta do another 100 lines.
Oh god.
He was like, okay, let's do it. and it turned out really, really well. So it was a great experience working with him.
That's amazing. Just curious, how long does something like that take, like to get all of everything?
So we did it in a day.
Okay.
But it wasn't like a 10-hour Hollywood day. It was like a 4 or 5 hours.
Ah, man.
Yeah, and I don't think that would be. I don't think that's advisable generally. I would say maybe give a little more time generally if you're. I wouldn't plan to do what we did. Like I think we got away with it, and the results that turned out. I'm really impressed with the fact that he did it. But I have heard of other stories where it didn't go so well. So, yeah.
What was that like? As far as I know, like I can't say this enough times, but like I know you guys had been focused on the kind of character-driven story stuff from the beginning. But like, at any point, did you guys consider like having a voiceless protagonist since it's in VR? Or like, what was the decision like to kind of nail down? You wanted to make sure that the player character kind of had a voice and had a strong sense of character in the game.
I mean, for sure, it was we were in alignment, like Jay and I agreed about doing it, but it was a choice for sure. It was, and it's something we revisited again and again and again, and like, I'm glad we made the choice we did. Like in Chiaro and the Elixir of Life, you play Chiaro. You don't play yourself. And I think a lot of games go halfway there, and they're kind of like, well, it's sort of you, but it's sort of not you. And we're like, no, Chiaro is you, and Chiaro is voiced by Taylor Gray. And we wrote the script for Chiaro, and then we actually added it a little bit to fit Taylor even better. I mean, I think it works really well.
What are you able to get out of that? Because I've noticed actually, like successfully, I might add, in certain VR titles that have come out. Like I recently played Torn, and I thought like that was obviously important for the story that they were trying to tell, to have like a character, have the player character be an actual like person and part of the story. Like for you. And it seems like it's much more important, I think, actually in Chiaro, because it really like Chiaro has a place in the world that you've created Chiaro's not like an outsider really. I don't think to the world that you guys are trying to show. So like what does that allow you to do as a storyteller that having a voiceless protagonist doesn't?
Well, the biggest thing is that the story of Chiaro, a large part of it is really about the relationship between Boca and Chiaro. And like a lot of the content we find really enchanting or compelling, for lack of a better word, is about that. You know, like if you look at a game like The Last of Us, it's you do shoot a lot of things in that game, but it's a game about the relationship between Ellie and Joel. And like if you did that in first person with a voiceless protagonist, like imagine, I don't know if you've played The Last of Us, but if you imagine,
I have.
Okay, yeah. So imagine that you were doing that as like a first-person game, like Quake or Deus Ex or something, and you took the voice away. Like you would still feel connected to Ellie, but
it's not. Yeah. An interesting parallel, like, and this is like I haven't really thought these things through as much before our conversation right now, but like Half-Life 2 with the voiceless protagonist and Alex Vance, right?
Yeah.
She's a memorable character, but you're right as far as like I can't really like I don't have the same understanding of how they fit together as a relationship. I understood her, but not the relationship.
And like in Half-Life, you do Half-Life 1 even like it's cool exploring and having like the interactions and the storytelling in Half-Life are done pretty well. But if you want to tell the story about like if the story is that relationship, it's not just about things happening to the protagonist in a way that's genuine and well done. It's actually about that relationship. Like I say, I go back to the Last of Us thing where I don't think, like I think you're a lot more likely to see Ellie as an ammo belt if it's just you, the player, playing, and not like Joel, you know? And like you are Joel, but you're also kind of like inhabiting Joel. You know, like there's you can really feel that dynamic between the two characters. And so like in Chiaro, it's you as Chiaro building Boca at the start of the game. Like you bring him to life and that begins the story between the two characters of you. So for Jay and I, that was like, that's what we wanted to do. We'd watched this movie, The Boy and the Beast, in Austin while we were hackathoning. And that's about this master-apprentice relationship. It's a great animated movie. That was central from the start, is this relationship between two characters and how VR could kind of give us new ways to explore that.
Yeah, what were some of the things in particular that you guys were able to do in VR to kind of build that relationship? Like I've only played the beginning of the game, so obviously like I made him his tea, and I was going back and forth like and interacting with all those ways, but like. Yeah, what were some of the things you did, and what were some of the things that you guys like were hoping to do, or just what were things that you think make building relationships in VR like extra special?
Well, so we put the building in straight away. We liked that. We thought building stuff in VR can be pretty fun. He's a steam-powered penguin. Let's build him. And that was great. That wasn't too bad as well. The first couple levels of the game are kind of exploring just sort of simple interactions with the character and sort of getting a feel for the world before we sort of ramp things up. As things go on, we have a bit of the dog chasing cars thing. We sort of started to see what was possible. So like 15 months in or 12 months in, we hadn't really done a lot with the AI. And I had talked to Jay about it. I had started doing AI programming once we hired some amazing artists. I sort of switched about a little over a year in and just ended up doing the art direction.
Okay.
But so we've got this amazing character artist, Marc-Andre Bouchard, and an environment artist called Justin Dorian. And I just sort of ended up managing the artwork of those two after about a year. So most of the environment is Justin, and all the little creatures and stuff besides the snail goblin are made by Marc-Andre.
Okay.
And some of the non-speaking characters that are important, he also did all those, and a lot of great work. But anyway, so I started doing the AI programming at some point, and was talking to Jay and was just like, "There's no way we're doing a buddy AI mission." Like, I was just like, "It would be so cool, but like, we're not doing it. Don't let me do it." And then like, after like a year of working on it, and like I was spending sort of 60, 70 hours a week just working. Like, a lot of that was just studying. I was like, I found this guy. I read some AI textbooks, and I was just messaging everyone. But like, I read this book. It's like Programming AI or something like that. I can't remember the title, but in the table of contents, it was like a appendix of all these different people that had each written an article, right? And I was like, some of these must live in Montreal. And I started emailing all these people in this book, being like, I badly need help working on this. Please tell me how to improve the AI about steam-powered penguins. And at about this time, I was talking to Jay and was just like, yeah, we're not doing a buddy AI mission. And then after about a year, I was like, I think we could do a buddy AI mission.
Okay.
And so then we actually got lucky there, because I started us off and got pretty far, but it really took bringing on some other people at that point to get us all the way there. But now that is one of the things you do.
That's awesome.
Like, so later in the game, you play catch with Boca.
Yeah, I played catch actually with him, which was awesome. That was so cool.
Yes. So later in the game, we may or may not bring that back. You'll have to explore to find out more.
Interesting.
But the that's something we'd like to do more of, actually. Is stuff like that, where you're actually interacting with the character, and the storytelling is kind of happening at the same time, rather than just being scripted,
Yeah, I do. That's really cool. Like, as far as it did, so I know you had developed the script and the story ahead of time and then implement. Like, how much did it end up changing when it was all said and done after you guys developed the game?
Yeah, like a lot. The 3-act structure and a lot of the important things stayed, but there was some fairly... The number of levels and the number of environments and the characters and that sort of thing stayed, but our there were a lot of edits that happened, and some of them were fairly large. The biggest one I can't actually... Maybe 6 months from now I'll tell you about that one, but it's a huge spoiler.
Okay, don't. No one's played the game yet, hopefully, so that's what as far as the world that you guys created, do you see? I know it's kind of too early to tell. You haven't released Chiaro yet, but I mean, did you hope to maybe tell other stories within this universe, this world that you created, or was this all for the service of this specific story?
I think the way we're thinking about it, or that we try to tell ourselves to think about it, is to do everything in the service of this one thing, and that's actually the best way to do. We definitely want to do what you're talking about. We really fell in love with the world creating it. Like, we can really see that... like Nesreen, one of the animators on our team, is like really in love with Scoria. Yeah, she loves that character, and like the peanut butter pig and Boca are very close to my heart, and actually Jay's too. Like, everyone's at this point, really. And Ellery as well. So the characters, we feel really close to them, and the aesthetics of the world, I think we'd like to spend more time in, for sure. So it's definitely something we think about, but I think it's very easy to... You don't want to change things too much just to make plans for a sequel or something.
Yeah.
But we definitely would like to do it. So if you like Chiaro and the Elixir of Life, try it out. If you enjoy it, let us know.
For sure. And I mean, I can tell you, I had a ton of fun playing it, and I'm really impressed with the work you guys have done. So I mean, I'm excited to play through all the rest of it, when I get off of this, and yeah, it's really, really, really good work. So yeah, you guys should be super proud and excited about the release date. So
yeah, I mean, we are. Like, right now, as I said, we're in crazy shift mode, but we were mixing the score till midnight last night.
That's what so I'm really glad you meant, because that was one of these points here that I'm like, all right, I have to mention it somehow, even if it I have to go off track to do it. The score, the music of the game, that was one of the things that, like, even before I think the visuals, when the menu came up, and I wanted to talk about that too, because I thought it was a really genius idea to do, like, have to go and physically grab the book in order to open the menu at the beginning of the game.
Yeah.
I just those kind of moments in VR, there are a few games that, like, I can, like, super memorable games like Moss, or like some other, like, where you turn on the game and, like, the first thing that kind of etches itself in your memory is, like, how they implement your first moments in the game. And that was like I turned on the game, and at first I wasn't sure exactly, like, I don't know if it was the way it had loaded up right away or what.
Right.
Like, it was like the book was kind of behind me a little bit. And so at first I was like, oh, did it load right? Like, I'm not, and I turned around and I saw the book out of the corner of my eye. I was like, oh, and I went over there and picked it up and, like, opened it up, and, like, and it was just something that I was like, wow, that's really, really cool and fun. And so not to distract me from my point. My point was the music. So the music, how, like, who came up with the score? Who scored the game? And sound design in general, I think, is super strong. I wanted to talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, so I scored the game, but the sound design is Scott Rosenkrantz, Jay's brother.
Okay.
And so he's also the cellist on the soundtrack.
Okay.
But I ended up writing the score. That was something that actually I think it might just be a studio habit to be overly ambitious and then just have to,
That's incredible.
Work out how to make it all work. We actually and the score was mixed by a man named Patrice Pruneau. Patrice the Platypus Pruneau, and we had a ton of fun mixing it, and I think between Scott, myself, and Patrice, Scott did significantly more work in the game, but we came up with something together, and I think we all sort of share that attitude. Like, I had wanted to do a score that was sort of fitting of something that maybe a Studio Ghibli film would do, or maybe like a sort of Star Wars movie or something, something a bit more orchestral. And I think that fits in with the sort of aesthetic goals we had, which were like a much higher fidelity type of character, it seemed fitting. Or, like, you look at...
No, it really does. Like, that's why I'm so surprised that, like, I didn't know, like, how much of a music background you had, but, like, it was really impressive. And I was assuming that you went out and hired someone to score it, and, like, really, like, because it fits in perfectly with the theme of the game, and, like, every step of the way you feel like it's appropriate, and it gives you that sense of, like, wonder and exploration that I'm sure you guys were looking for.
Yeah. I mean, we were lucky to I think through production, like, I love to play the piano, and through production I was sort of tinkering around with different characters' themes, and then that sort of just, like, once again, we sort of have a way of trapping ourselves into these big ideas and then having to make it work, basically, because we're just like, we have to do it this way. It's just going to be too cool if we...
Yeah.
Like, I'd been tinkering around with the character themes on the piano just sort of after work. We've got a piano in the studio, and so, sometimes after work or even at lunchtime or something, if people aren't in total, crunch mode or whatever, I might just play the piano. But I've been tinkering around with that, and so it seemed kind of hard to pass it on at that point to someone that would do it justice. Like, if someone was, if you wanted someone to do a John Williams score for you, you probably would need quite a large budget, and you would also, they probably need to be there at the start, and it's just like a whole thing.
Yeah.
So I thought, like, I reckon we can probably get it done.
That's
So
amazing.
like we it was the first time I had done an orchestral score, uh, and so we which was pretty cool, you know, like
There's no way
but
anyone would guess that. I don't think from listening to it. I mean,
yeah,
it's
well, we put it was a lot of work, but you know, it was really fun working with the musicians and with Patrice and Scott. You know, like
so
Scott and
cool.
I played piano on there, and like Scott and I would be showing up like with these sort of industry musicians, and they would be like, it's crazy, you know, like with the dialogue in there. The first thing we did was the trailer, you know,
Yeah.
and so we scored the trailer just to see if this was all going to work out. And so we did the score for the trailer. We got the musicians into the studio. Scott and I went in there, and like, you know, we were probably on an 80-hour week already, and we were just like, you know, we were like eyes on the prize mode. You know,
Wow.
like we're gonna get it done regardless. And the musicians were just like, yeah, well, I mean, you know, these parts, like they are actually working pretty well.
Like
Because you
everyone
know
was surprised.
they had just come from the symphony orchestra, you know,
Wow.
and we were like, so here's what's happening. Like, we're putting you in the world of Chiaro and the Elixir of Life. You've just built this steam-powered penguin, and you're going on an epic journey to find this lost fountain of elixir. And, you know, they would be, you know, like our violinist was just off to play classical music in Korea. This woman, Daphne, she's amazing. And, you know, it was just a very different world, but I think that was a really exciting thing for everyone. You know, like
Yeah.
the guy mixing, Patrice, who was mixing the soundtrack, was, you know, like he was really excited to be working on the project because it was so unique to what he was normally doing, which was like mixing, like, you know, the like pop records at a pretty big studio
Hmm.
here, and well, some rock as well, and
Hmm.
sometimes orchestras, but yeah, you know, like traditional music studio, not really like film studio stuff.
Yeah.
And you know, the musicians on the score were people I had known from when I was playing music more, and so they were coming from the jazz and classical world, and we sort of all came together to make it happen.
That's amazing. Like, and so running through my head when we were talking about it, the game is scheduled to release next week when you guys are hearing this, September 13th, 2018. When did when did you guys initially think that you were going to try to release this game, and when did you know, like, because I'm just curious, like, what did you have initial goals for an earlier release date, and did that change, or how did that all work?
Well, yeah. So we haven't actually received financial support from any of the platforms. Yeah,
Mm.
we've paid for the game with our own and some of our friends, well, a few at this point, money basically, and they've been really supportive of us. Definitely, but it took longer than expected.
Huh.
Yeah, Jason and I initially capitalized the company, and then we both put more in, and then we got more and more friends involved, basically.
Yeah.
But as things moved along, I think those people also saw what it could be. You know, like we
Hmm.
were at some point after a year, we were like, we're not going to get it done in 18 months, but
Mm.
like here, like we're going to come to the US and show you the game. You know.
Yeah.
And so I think everyone had a lot of faith in what was possible at that point, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it definitely was not. I think we did probably 6 months pre-production and counting that, where we were getting up to speed, where we sort of had to do like a 2-year game design course in 6 months, and then
Mm.
the
It's crazy.
next 2.5 years were probably just building the game, and there was some. One thing that happened is initially Jay and I, and it was Scott as well, we thought we'll just get some. It wasn't kind of moving quickly enough for us, and so we
Mm.
thought it would be great to have some artists working on the project, so I could do other stuff.
Hmm.
And I started doing night classes for like industry night classes for Z Modeler, which is a ZBrush. It was a new part of ZBrush, sort of with the intention of finding students at the school where that was held.
Mm.
So it was like a night class at NAD, which is the game design school in Montreal, probably the best game design strictly school.
Hmm.
Uh, And so I was kind of like, oh yeah, if I sort of start going there, maybe I'll get, because we didn't really know a lot of people in the game industry here at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, we'll start to meet some people, especially sort of young people that might have that same, ambition to just do something cool. Mm. And so we actually got pretty lucky at that point. We were able to hire a few people for a summer, and they were pretty into it. But at the end of the summer, some of them went back to school, and then they went part-time over that period, and then there was a little bit of turnover there at the end of that. And so we sort of upgraded our staff a little bit by the end, and so I think, like I said, the foliage in the game, that we probably went through 3 or 4 tree pipelines before we got the final result. So it took longer than expected, for sure. Like I would say, almost by 2, by 2.
Yeah, but this also was the first game that you guys ever, and like I said, like by anyone's standards, this is a very ambitious VR title. I mean, there aren't very many VR titles out there by any studio that has the kind of, I think, scope and scale that Chiaro does. So that's, I mean, an incredible story, I think.
Yeah, I think Jason, Scott, and I, and now the rest of the team, who are we're all very tightly knit at this point. And I think for all of us, it's been a real life experience. I think that we set out to do something with high visual fidelity, with a orchestral score, with great character interactions, that was 3 to 5 hours of storytelling. And we were kind of like, if we don't get there, well, okay, let's just get there, because it's bad if we don't get there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because we can't. We're like the kid in the candy store. We're like, these things are possible, so let's just do them, because that's what we want to do as a company. We want to do those things. We want to do high fidelity, colorful. Someone called our art style, colorful but not cartoony. High fidelity assets with that kind of big cinematic feeling. And so once we committed to that, it was just a matter of having the tenacity to stick with it, basically.
Yeah, and throughout those, close to 3 years that you guys have been developing, I mean, obviously there have been changes and different trends in the VR industry and in the gaming industry as a whole. How do you guys see yourselves as far as releasing Chiaro in the current market, and kind of how it fits into where things are right now in VR?
Well, so the good thing is people are excited about Chiaro right now, and we can see that in the amount of time spent watching our trailer is something like 6,000 hours.
Wow.
Yeah. Which is for a minute 40 or 2-minute trailer is a lot. And so people aren't clicking away. They want to find out what happens next. And there's a lot of hardware out there. I mean, maybe not for a AAA studio yet, and hopefully the platforms sponsor the content, even though it might not make sense. What I'd like to see is larger budgets to kind of fuel more ambitious projects. But there are enough people out there, if they're excited about Chiaro, for us to have a sustainable business long term. That's very exciting. The thing is that it does seem like people that are really into VR maybe aren't just spending as much time there, and we hope that those people try Chiaro, because I think that we give people something manageable, where it's like, look, you don't have to commit to a multiplayer game where you have to learn how to get good at it, but then you're worried there aren't enough people playing on a daily basis to justify how long you spend into it. We just want to bring you into this world. We've spent a lot of time polishing it. We've put a lot of love into it, and it's not that big a time commitment. It's long, but I think it's a good manageable size for someone to get something out of. And if nothing else, I don't think there's a game like Chiaro in VR.
No,
for better or worse.
Yeah. No, and like you said, I think it's important to emphasize that that's 3 to 5 hours of like story driven gameplay. Like it's very like you're spending that amount of time in a very like handcrafted, like very polished, very deliberately paced, title. I think that also kind of, I think, helps to hold people's attention, and it isn't something that you're just like willy nilly like getting it. Like when you put on your headset and you have a spare hour or two here and there, like you can really see a lot of what the game has to offer, I think, within that time period. So.
Yeah, exactly. And the one thing we have tried to do is just to keep introducing new things through the whole experience, so that you don't end up just with 12 levels of just the same thing,
Mm-hmm.
Like there's always something new around every corner in Chiaro.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
it's like I said, super impressed with what I've played so far, and I can't wait to play more. So, yeah, if we'll be releasing this close to your release. Again, it's coming out September 13th next week on Steam. For those out there.
Also, just sorry to cut you off, but we
No,
should also be good on Oculus on that day.
Yeah.
As well
Okay.
as Steam. But yeah, I mean, well, sorry, this is everything Vive.
Yeah.
But, we're definitely on Steam, and
Okay.
that's a great place to play Chiaro.
No, but also an Oculus. And then, did you guys have any plans on releasing for PlayStation VR, or you don't?
We will do it, and we've seen. You mentioned Moss earlier.
Yeah.
Like, Moss is an amazing game. Yeah, we love it at the studio, and I think people that like that game will love Chiaro. It's quite different, but I think that if you like one, you would probably kind of feel connected to the other. And if those guys, if that team, it's an amazing team, but it does seem like it's possible to do it on PSVR, and so we're gonna make sure that happens.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that said, I think we'll probably, after shipping, kind of stay pretty close to Chiaro, and then spend a week sleeping, and then tackle PSVR.
That makes a lot of sense.
we'll definitely do it, and I think we've got everything set up to do it. Like we've started doing it. We've got a PS Dev Kit, and we've started integrating it. But I think probably the end of the year is what we're looking for as a launch date, somewhere around the end of the year.
Awesome. Well, I'm sure there's a lot of people out there that'll be excited to hear that. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then as far as like people, following up with what you guys are doing on that front, and like anything else that you guys might be working on after Chiaro during the launch, etc. Like, what's the best way that people can keep up with you guys, and then also provide you guys with feedback on the game?
Well, so the best place to provide feedback, especially positive feedback, would be on Steam. And if you are a fan of Chiaro, like after the 13th, telling us about it on Steam, even little things that we could fix post-launch, you should let us know. We would love to hear if you had a great experience playing the game, because we really would like to keep doing pretty much what we've been doing, which is, like I said, the ambitious VR titles. Yes, I would say Steam is probably the best place to let us know about the game. In terms of following us on social media, we're everywhere as Martov Co. So that's like Facebook, Twitter, all of that. We're actually running a promotion right now at martov.com/playchiaro, martov.com/playchiaro, where you can enter a contest to win a copy of Chiaro, and that'll actually help you stay in touch with what we're up to as well.
Okay.
In that contest.
And
so
how
it's kind of a double whammy there. You get to find out what we're up to, and you could also win.
Okay, and how long will that contest be going? Do you know?
We'll be going all the way up to our release.
Okay.
So until we might give one away on the day too.
Okay, cool. So depending on when this goes up, so this may or may not be relevant by the time you guys are hearing this, but we'll have to figure that out, and maybe we can twist their arm into giving out an extra code or something.
Oh yeah, that's, actually, if it doesn't get up in time, I'll I'll put up a page just to give away a couple keys for listeners or something.
Awesome. All right.
Yeah.
Well, Perfect. Well, thank you so much for your time, Martin. It was a pleasure. And like I said, coming into this discussion, I didn't know, how new you guys were at this or what. Like, all I can say is, like, I played Chiaro, and goes up there toe to toe with some of the best VR experiences that I've had since I've owned my Vive so far. And I think people out there should really, really, really be interested and look, if you're into story-driven games, if you like exploration and being in like a very immersive and detailed world, I think Chiaro is something that everybody should be looking out for next week.
Yeah, I will mention there, Ronnie, by the way, if you get further in the game, we do ramp up the gameplay there. And I'd like to hear how you do at some of the trials later.
Oh, God, trials. Okay. Yeah, I haven't gotten to that yet, so I'll have to give my updated impressions once I get a little bit further. So far... Yeah, so far, things have been pleasant. So,
yeah, you might still be in Chiaro Village, though.
Oh God, that is kind of how I feel, actually. No, but no, yeah.
Okay, well, it's great talking to you, and we'll be in touch.
All right, perfect. Have a good one.